Is any better?
And I'll probably skip some of these case studies in the interest of time because I think they're probably less relevant. But I really want to talk about the imposter syndrome thing. So you mentioned your students are a mixture of undergrad and graduate students?
Yeah, a mixture of undergrad and grads.
Okay. Yeah, I did notice on your on the comp166.org website that it does apply towards the undergraduate degree and the graduate degree, the Master of Science. So that's pretty cool.
Okay, hold on. I'm gonna ask right now on the chat because we're gonna have audio. Yeah, here we go. Can you hear?
Who are you talking to? Me?
No, can anyone on the Twitch stream hear? Okay, so why is... Hey, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay, one of the problems... Are you there?
Oh, wow. I just heard that feedback.
Okay, one of the problems... Are you there?
Oh, wow.
Should I do an audio output?
I just heard that feedback. Pardon me?
Okay, one of the problems... Are you there?
Oh, wow.
Should I do an audio output? All right, so this is going to get interesting because I'm trying to get, I think we're having a problem with audio. So I have our audio input capture.
Is it on my end or your end?
I think it's on my end.
Okay.
Oh. Hey, Chef, can you keep talking?
Yeah, so I'll just, all right, let me switch scenes, but I'll keep talking so we can test the audio. Let me go back to this. All right. And so here's the intro slide. You should be very pleased that I have the Tufts University logo there because I care. Fancy animations.
Can you say hi to Ancients?
Oh, Ancients, is he on really?
Yeah, Ancients is on chat right now. Ancients is on Twitch.
Oh, okay. I am not because I have too many windows open as it is. But Ancients, if you can hear me, I'm glad you're here, dude. And thanks for the comments on Twitter this morning.
No, keep talking.
All right.
Keep talking because I need Ancients. Can you hear Chef?
And here's the agenda. We'll talk about a bunch of things. And I've got the funny pictures of goals that no one ever laughs at. But I keep the joke in there anyway. And obligatory, I learned these things the hard way. And then the history of InfoSec. And I go through some important dates. And I always have some people that like to point out that InfoSec existed well before these dates, and that's true. That is absolutely true. But I think there was a marked change. History will show us that as we moved into the 21st century, InfoSec became a different animal than what it was prior to then. And then I talk about the fact that I have an undergraduate degree in music, and Twitter has loved to make fun of people in the past about that, which I think is unfair because reasons. And then we'll get into the meat of the thing, the predictors of success. How's the audio working out, Ming? I'll just keep on talking.
Yeah, how is the audio, everyone? Is the audio okay? Can you hear Chef? It looks like the stream preview, the screen looks good.
Okay. Despite the fact my face is on it?
Yeah, I mean, it looks good now. I mean, it looks really, really good. On the screen looks really good.
Okay.
The screen looks really good. We got like 3 minutes. Ming is much louder than Chef, but both are easily heard. Well, okay, I'm pretty loud, but
Yeah, and I'm not talking with my big boy voice because of this sinus infection thing I have going on too. So I don't know if I can. I mean, my volume meters on OBS look pretty good. Actually, I'm getting very good levels. So.
well, we're doing OBS on OBS on OBS on OBS on OBS, so it's like.
Oh dear. Yeah. Okay.
It's one of those deals.
Well, yeah.
Let me see on my video if there's a way that I can. Oh, there's no way that I can like. I know why that my webcams have reduced frame rate. I think it also doesn't help that. It also doesn't help that I have like the highest definition thing on, so that doesn't help. Oh fuck.
Oh, so you're probably jamming a lot of bits.
Exactly. So that's really what's happening.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, that's what's really happening right now. Okay.
Like folks have confirmed that they can hear us anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hearing like your webcams have reduced frame rate. I'll try not to move my damn head. Yeah.
I really like the wall of sheep scene we had.
Mm-hmm.
From last year. It's a good looking one.
There you go. Look at that. Yeah, we're all on reduced frame rate.
Okay. Well, hopefully my thumbnail is pretty small, so hopefully the static content on the slides will be acceptable.
Oh, by the way, one thing I have to be very careful of now that I'm on the air and hot mic, I shouldn't be like doing like checking my iPad and phone and all that stuff or playing with pen and stuff. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so it is now. Oh, I have to get a water though. I mean, I can get myself water, but so it is now 4:30. Welcome everyone to today's introduction to security class at Tufts University. Thank you so much. Today is the last Thursday of the month of October, and I want to wish everyone a happy Cybersecurity Awareness Month. So today we're going to do something really special. And today, each and every one of my class, my cybersecurity class, I have a special guest speaker. And it's not going to be a real security class for me if I don't have a guest speaker. And I can't believe that we're doing this. We're doing a virtual guest speaker by way of what we got. We got Twitch, we got YouTube, and we also got Discord on, our favorite platform. And we got it going. There may be some issues with our webcam frame rates, but it is my pleasure today to introduce an old friend someone I work many years with. I think it's been a long time, and someone I admire as a friend. Also, it's nice that not only someone I work with, but we can banter about stuff even during the off season, which is right now during college
Yep.
football season. And it is my pleasure to give the red carpet treatment to Damon Small, who we better go by the name Chef, the Swedish chef. Take it away, good sir.
Thank you, Ming. That was a very kind introduction. It's a pleasure to be here. It really is. You and I were chatting about this earlier. I love talking to students because I'm not going to be doing this forever, right? I mean, there's got to be new people coming into this industry. And you're right. You and I have known each other for a very long time, and I'll plug in the obligatory Go Tigers. Ming made it clear to me he wanted. That's right. He wanted to save plenty of time for Q&A amongst the people that are attending this, so I'll probably blow through some of these slides fairly quickly, but I first want to say thanks again to Ming and to Tufts University for having me on. This is fantastic. My employer, NCC Group, they support me in doing this, and my wife and editor. If you do any public speaking, make sure you have a good editor. I happen to be married to mine. But of course, all of you that are attending this today, I mean, there would be no point in doing this if it wasn't for
Hey
you.
chef,
So,
would you mind if I mean one person? Any chance you can make him louder? Can you speak louder?
yeah, I'll do my best. I apologize. I've got a bit of a head cold, so I'm trying to preserve my voice. But if I use a bigger voice, I could. I don't want to fuss with my microphone settings in OBS. But yeah, hopefully this is a little bit better. I hope it is. If we have time, oops, wrong screen. Yeah, I might be able to fool with my microphone settings, but I don't want to do that right now. Let me carry on for now, and y'all let me know if this isn't any better. Okay, a little bit about me. As Ming said, I'm technical director for NCC Group in North America. I've been in IT since '95 and InfoSec since 2001. Louisiana native, go Tigers. I studied music at Louisiana State. We'll talk about that as it relates to InfoSec in a minute. But I also went to grad school in 2005 for information assurance. So that's a little bit about me. NCC Group, if you're not familiar with us, once we're done with this, if anybody's interested, but in the interest of time, just know that we're a consultancy based in the United Kingdom with a lot of offices here in North America as well. And we're publicly traded on the London Stock Exchange. So please do look us up. Okay, so here's the agenda. Like I said, some of this I'll go through pretty quickly. But I have some goals. I want to talk about the InfoSec industry specifically, a little bit about how I got into InfoSec and how that might be contrasted to how some of you might get into InfoSec. And there's a couple of case studies I want to give about friends and colleagues that have come into this industry in different ways. And then closing up with how did we get here as an industry? Where are we going as an industry? And how will we get there? So here's some goals. All right, obligatory joke. Those aren't the goals for this presentation, but so again, the goals are to talk about our industry and some of the predictors of success. Now, I don't claim to be an expert in career development necessarily. A lot of the lessons learned are things that I've learned the hard way. As that motivational poster says, it could be that the purpose of your life is only to serve as a warning to others. So I always thought that was funny. And in that way, make your own mistakes, please, as you start your careers and move through them. Make your own mistakes. Don't make the ones that I made. So let's start. First salient point I think I want to make, the history of InfoSec. So it was once ancillary to production support. So any of us that started out in systems administration or as a network engineer, I mean, our main job was keeping the lights on in the data center, so to speak. And any kind of security things were almost secondary to that. For example, updating software was very primitive back in the mid-1990s. We didn't have Windows Update, for example. So when I built a server, we would apply whatever patches or service packs were available, and then we were done. You had to go to the Microsoft knowledge base manually and download each patch. So it was not at all the same process that we enjoy today. So when did the information security industry start? Here's some interesting dates. The company I work for, NCC Group, was founded in 1999. DEF CON itself, and Ming and I are familiar with DEF CON, was in 1993. Satan, which is a terrible acronym, and I always forget what it stands for, but it was one of the first open source vulnerability scanners that was ever created in 1995. And that's a whole other slide deck, but boy, the industry went crazy. A lot of people thought it was terrible to release a tool that bad guys could use, but that's another slide deck. But that happened in 1995. It became a commercial product in 1998. IOActive, a company I'm familiar with. It's also a consulting firm. They were founded in 1998. Same with White Hat in 2001. Another tool that we love in this industry is Metasploit. That was around 2003. And Layers and TrustedSec, two other security firms, were 2008, 2012. So the reason I bring all this up is when the dot-com bubble was bursting around the late 1990s, early 2000s, a lot of people, myself included, pivoted into focusing on information security as a discipline, as a full-time job. And I think just from this brief list here of products and important companies, there were a lot of people that were moving in that direction as around the turn of the century. So when I say that information security started in the early 2000s, I realized that security was certainly a problem well before then. But in this context, I think that's an important point. So I've already told you about me, so why am I showing this again? Well, first of all, that's what I look like with a short beard. But one thing that might stand out here is that I studied music as an undergrad. So why is that important? Well, there was a problem at Equifax many years ago. There was a huge breach that got a lot of attention, and a lot of people unfairly made fun of the CSO at that organization because she had 2 degrees in music. And of course, me having a degree in music, I saw that. I'm like, well, wait a minute, that doesn't have anything to do. There were systemic problems within that organization. Fortunately, Twitter regained its composure, and they realized that, yeah, you can't pick on someone just because they have a degree in music. I work with a ton of very talented people that are successful but haven't necessarily studied it in as formal a way as you are today. So I came into the industry studying music. I got a job at the LSU recording studio. That made me fall in love with technology. So I kind of went the experience, training, and education route. So that's one way to do it. I'm not saying it's the best way to do it, certainly not the only way to do it. So I'm going to talk about predictors of success with the obligatory Venn diagram here: education, training, and experience. I think those things are very, very important. I'm not in love with where the circles overlap, how I have those labels defined. It could be other ways, but I'm just trying to make the point that you're going to have some combination of education, training, and experience. And again, every organization that hires somebody is going to take those things into consideration in various ways. And that's not to say that you have to have all of them, or that if you lack one of them, you're not going to be successful. That's not what I'm saying at all. Every professional gets to make their own decision on where they want to spend their time. I loved grad school. When I graduated, I went through academic withdrawal for a while and thought, I should be writing papers about something. That's not for everybody. Some people love formal training. Some people love on-the-job training. So the point is when I talk about these things, realize that I'm not saying you have to have these. I'm just approaching it from the perspective of that's kind of how I think of these things. So when I say experience, what I'm talking about, if you saw the movie Groundhog Day, I'm not talking about doing the same year of experience over and over and over again. We have to leave our comfort zones. So as you're moving through your career, don't be afraid to do things with which you're unfamiliar. That's the only way we're going to get better. And so if you have an opportunity to leave your comfort zone, that's probably a very good thing. Also, have a support network that includes mentors. And when I say mentors, I mean, it's obviously someone that has some skill or experience that you don't have. But that doesn't mean it has to be someone that's older than you. There's a couple of guys I worked with down here in Houston that are closer in age to my teenage son than they are to mine, but they are really good at what they do. And when I was making the transition from blue team to red team, they were very important to me and helped me out a great deal. And I still call on them often. So have a support network, including mentors, but a mentor doesn't have to be someone chronologically older than you. Now training. Oh, anytime you see a QR code, by the way, if I reference a URL at the bottom, I'm just referencing where I took an image from, just to give credit where credit is due. So, I know, trust me, they're not malicious QR codes, but if you want to know where that image came from, some people like to pick on certain certifications. The CISSP is an easy target. I have a CISSP, and it's not a panacea. Does having a CISSP mean I'm an expert? Of course not. It means I passed an exam.
Yeah.
But some people will use that, as one of those predictors of success. If it's important to an organization, then it's important to you. If you don't like certifications, then that's fine.
Hey, Chef.
We'll talk more about that now. Yeah.
Chef, hold on for a second. If you wouldn't mind, I want to switch something.
Battery.
With me, can all right, hold on. Back at it. That ain't gonna work. All right, try. Go for it. Hello?
Man, can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can still hear you. All right, continue. Sorry.
Okay, no worries. All right, so I know I'm talking to college students. You might not like this cartoon, but the reality of it is, education can include a lot of debt, but I am a big proponent of formal education, as I've said. And a lot of discussions in our industry are around the value of education. And I think a lot of people can confuse education and job training. Now, there might be a lot of overlap between those two things, and there might not as well. So living in Houston, you have to have a favorite astronaut. So here's my favorite astronaut. He's a gentleman called Story Musgrave. The reason I bring him up is because while he was training for his first mission with NASA, he went to school at the University of Houston, Clear Lake, I think it was, because that's down by where Johnson Space Center is. And by the time he retired, he had amassed 7 degrees. He started as an astronaut as a medical doctor, so he was a flight surgeon. But he went on to earn a variety of degrees, including literature and philosophy and things that were all over the map. And if you want to read his Wikipedia, there's a link to it there. Did having a literature degree make him a better astronaut? Well, I mean, that's debatable, maybe not directly, but my point is that education is not always about job training. It can be, and sometimes you could argue it should be, but I still believe that education for education's sake is still a good thing. And I will consider that when I'm looking at candidates, are they real? They have to be good at InfoSec, obviously. But do they have interest outside of InfoSec? And the reason that's important is as our industry evolves, are they going to be able to keep up with those changes and to pull from other domains of knowledge that they have to keep up with those changes? And that's another thing we'll bring up as well. So I just wanted to set the stage when I talk about experience, training, and education. That's kind of where I'm coming up, from where I'm coming at it. All right, so I got a couple of case studies. I'm going to skip over a couple of these, Ming, because I know you wanted to make this as interactive as possible, and that's cool. So I'll at least do 2 of them, though. One case study is someone I work with. He's a consultant early in his career. He got a 4-year degree in computer information systems, and he knew even back then that hacking was cool. So even when he was in high school, he wanted to be an information security professional. But he didn't want to be a developer, but he assumed that the only way to get into InfoSec was through IT. But by 2014, InfoSec jobs were becoming more and more common, such that bypassing IT was not surprising. to him. So that's exactly what he did. He gave me some notable quotes, and I love this one because I started off in defense. The reason my lab coat is blue is no accident. You know, I'm a old school blue teamer. He wished he had done defense first, and he said even though he's not a professional software developer, he gets better at application assessments by actually building software. So he's got a lot of pet projects. I myself am not a developer at all. I'm a routing and switching person. But if you're into software, even if you're not doing it professionally, building software will make you better at assessing it. And he said experience has been very useful for him. Obviously, he's got a college degree. He's a little down on formal training. Now, I'm not, wanting to completely, take down formal training. Just know when you take a class, some classes are better than others. But at the end of the day, experience and getting out of your comfort zone, like I said earlier, that might be the most important thing. Here's someone that's very similar to me. He's mid-career, like I am, a business owner, and he has a 4-year degree in English and economics. So same deal. He didn't start off in IT at all, right? He got an English and econ degree and eventually got an MBA. He went straight into IT after undergrad. So just like I had a music degree and then boom, I went in as a systems administrator. At that time, there was no clear path to systems administration. Computer science and computer engineering prepare you for certain things, but sysadmin at the time was a little less well-defined. When he went to graduate school, that led to management positions, and that's what allowed him to open up his own firm. Again, he and I are the same age, so, we both pivoted as a result of the dot-com bust. And he says if the dot-com bust hadn't happened, he wouldn't have gone to business school, and that's what made him want to have a more holistic view and not be locked into any specific technical role. And his English degree, he said, was very important because it really helps his critical thinking and analyzing written work. And I agree with that completely. People ask me all the time, Chef, do you regret getting a degree in music? And I say, no, I haven't had a paid gig playing drums in a very long time, but that critical thinking in liberal arts carries over very well to technical disciplines, in my opinion. So we can come back to these if we want to, Ming. Oh, here's an important one. If y'all are familiar with imposter syndrome, well, if you're not, I'll tell you what it is. So if you look at the blue circle there on the left, all of us have a discrete little circle of things that we know. We all have an area of expertise. But some days it seems like we're in an industry where we're surrounded by people that know everything. And I know this much, and everybody else knows all this other stuff. And I think, what am I even doing here? The reality of it is, as illustrated there on the right side of the screen, and by the way, again, there's a QR code for the URL for the person that wrote this in a blog, is that we all have a very similar fear of knowledge. And it's just that we're surrounded by all these people that have different spheres of knowledge. So keep in mind, if you're having one of those times where you're thinking, I'm an imposter, I don't belong here, everybody is better than I do. Trust me, as a 24-year veteran of this industry, we all feel that way. So be aware that this is a challenging industry made up of a bunch of really smart people. Some days I think I might actually be one of those people, but just know that this is a real deal, and you're going to struggle with it. And so just know that you're not alone. I'm going to skip that one too. So, and I alluded to this earlier. I mean, there's going to be failures that are going to happen along the way. This is a picture of Thomas Edison, and without getting into the debate of who really invented the light bulb, let's just go with his quote here. I have not failed 10,000 times. I have not failed once. I have succeeded in proving those 10,000 ways will not work. So when a failure occurs, sometimes that is the absolute best opportunity to learn. And don't think of, failure, it's a poverty of the English language that there's so many negative connotations associated with that word. But the reality of it is, not everything we do is going to be a home run. Not every single day at work is going to be fantastic. My son asked me once, he's a senior in high school, how I got so good at systems administration. And I told him, quite frankly, that, when I was still doing systems work, I figured out every possible way to screw up a Windows server imaginable. And every single time I did that, I had to fix it myself because I created the problem. You do that enough, and eventually you start to know some stuff. In preparing for jobs, now as a consultant, sometimes instrumenting the job can become very, very challenging, and using a variety of tools with which you might not be familiar, and sometimes they can be hard to set up. And those are not failures. That's how experience is gained. Everything's not going to work right the first time, and if it did, none of us would have jobs.
Yeah.
So embrace failure.
Cool. Actually, we have a couple of questions that are related. So,
yeah, okay. Okay.
So I just want to give everyone that's watching a heads up. If you have any questions, or thoughts for Chef, send them on Twitch, and we got 2 of them already. So the first question is, what are your thoughts on tools that automate the infosec process or manually testing systems?
That's a great question, and it's very timely. This just came up at work yesterday. We had not a debate, there was a discussion, though. Here's the answer. So I mentioned vulnerability assessment scanner. So I mentioned Satan and Saint specifically. I think tools are important because they allow security professionals to quickly gather information. So there's a place for you to have tools. Now, if all you're wanting to do is run some sort of automated process to gather information, and that's the end of it, then that's fine. In my experience as a consultant, though, when you're actually trying to do, a very detailed examination of the security posture of an environment, the tools are only meant to gather information, and then the human consultant or InfoSec Pro needs to take that information, do the analysis, figure out what are the important bits within that huge amount of information that's been gathered. And if you're doing a red team engagement, for example, then you try and put together an attack chain to figure out, okay, are any of these individual vulnerabilities actually going to lead me to getting elevated privileges or to pivot around the network, of those sorts of things. So tools are good, tools are important, but they're not an end-all be-all. They will not ever replace the human practitioner.
Okay.
So that's my 2 cents on that.
Another question that has come in is, what does an average day of work look like for you? Is it a lot of meetings and discussion, or is there more of a focus on technical work?
Ooh, another very good question. Yeah. So again, not to, I've got this title. I'm a technical director, so that puts me kind of sandwiched between the business and the technical side. Now, I am a technical director, so I am expected to still be technical. And in fact, I'm just rolling off a billable job earlier this week, and next week I start another billable job. So if I'm on a gig and a client is paying for my time, then I'm nearly entirely focused on working on that client engagement. If I'm not on a job, I do have some management duties that include, sales support and business development. A lot of those things will immediately turn off the younger practitioners, but that's why I have a job. The consultants and the folks that are maybe earlier in their career than I am can focus on being technical 100% of the time. So it's a mixture, actually, and I rather enjoy it. I mean, there are days where I have a ton of meetings, honestly, and when you're on, from Microsoft Teams call to Teams call to Teams call, it can get frustrating, but somebody has to be doing that work. And so I would describe it as, I'm sandwiched between the business and the technology. If there is a mad client, for example, and engagement's not going well, often it's the tech directors. I'm one of about 7 or 8 of us in North America that have this role. And a lot of times we'll go in and try and translate between the technical folks and the business and figure out, okay, what went wrong? How do we salvage it? it's a lot of problem solving. On the OSI model, I would say it's a lot of layer 8 problem solving, if that makes any sense.
Another question just came in. I don't have a traditional background, and I do mostly front end work. But what would be the best way to transition into this space?
I'm assuming the person that asked the question is talking about, something that's not limited to front end, but would also include the back end. And again, full disclosure, I'm not a developer myself, so I don't do a lot of software work, but I can tell you one skill set that we are often looking for is people that understand networking. And I know that there's a lot of people that do understand networking, they do it for a living, but when the OWASP, I always screw this up, the OWASP top 10 or top 20, whatever it is, the OWASP thing, for the longest time, web apps were really sexy, and the industry kind of started ignoring everything else. And finally, the pendulum started swinging back the other way. And I know at my employer, we get a lot of networking and routing and switching work. So if you're a front-end developer now, I would encourage you to try and see to learn about networking and routing and switching. How did the packet get from your front end that you developed to whatever back end it's communicating to, and what other components are involved in that? Now, a lot of people don't like networking at all, the same way I don't like software development. I just don't like it. So I would suggest, if you're doing front end stuff, make networking your next goal. And if you hate it, well, now you know you hate it.
Okay. All right. For everyone that's watching, please keep the question coming. We got 3 really, really, really good ones. Keep them coming, please.
Cool. Ming, should I carry on? It sounds like that's the last question for now, so I'll go ahead and
keep going. Yeah.
Yeah. The next point I wanted to bring up is to prepare for change. I'm not going to read this article to you. The link is there in the QR code. It was written by Dr. John Leonhard, who's a professor at the University of Houston, right here in Houston. And this story that he wrote, and it's a wonderful story. He talked about how people are afraid of computers, and he tied that back to the chauffeur problem. The chauffeur problem says that when automobiles were a new thing, they were very expensive, hard to maintain, and hard to operate. So a chauffeur was a very sought-after person because he or she could do all of that. And that person had a lot of power within, whatever household that they were working. But as the technology advanced, cars got cheaper and easier to operate, that became a less desirable goal. And the point was that the chauffeur capitalized, had all that information to his avail, but it didn't stay that way forever. So he summed it up nicely this way: knowledge is power, all right, but it's temporary power. For knowledge flows. What one person knows, another can also know. The only people condemned to be bossed about by others are the ones who deny their own ability to learn. They're the ones who fear their own automobile or their own computer. And this aired originally, it was a long time ago, but it has stuck with me all these years because I think it's true. Even though I can say, oh, I've been in this industry 24 years. You know what? If I stop growing professionally, I'm going to become a relic, just like the chauffeur was. So prepare for change. No matter, when you graduate, you'll be at one phase of your career, and in 5 years, 10 years, and so on and so forth, you'll go to other chapters of your career. The only constant is change. And so prepare for that, especially in InfoSec, because things move so quickly. And I'm sure Ming has told you about this already. He knows this as well as I do.
So a question just came in.
Yeah.
The question just came in, very related to this, is was there a big change adapting to COVID, or do you think the industry is in a good position to go remote?
I assume you're talking about InfoSec specifically. That's a really, your students are asking really good questions.
Yeah.
Yes, there was a significant change, and that was late February, early March, whenever it was. Now, I'm lucky because I was already working from home full time. I've been working from home full time for 5 years So it wasn't a huge change for me, and for our organization, we already had all the infrastructure in place to facilitate working from home. So for a consultancy, it wasn't a huge deal. The biggest deal is all of a sudden the utilization on our VPN concentrators went way up, right? Because now everybody's coming in on the VPN all at once. But that was a pretty easy adjustment. Other organizations that have their own InfoSec teams but are not necessarily businesses that are well suited for working remote, it's been more of an adjustment. But and we saw a big slowdown around that time, March, April, of clients that were saying, okay, hang on, we've got to get this work from home stuff sorted out. So there was a slowdown in work, but it very quickly went back up to normal or really close to normal levels, within a couple of months after that. So I don't think we're ever going to go. I hope the world gets back to normal, but I think what it proved is that working from home can be effective, and I think a lot of organizations, particularly in the Silicon Valley, are going to continue working from home. I'll say on a personal level, the biggest adjustment for me was I've been working from home for 5 years, but every 4 to 6 weeks I'd go out on the road to see a client or go to a security conference and hang out with people like Ming. I haven't had the pleasure of doing that in a while, and I got to say, I that was a nice break from the monotony to be able to go out and travel freely. And hopefully we'll be able to do that again soon.
Yeah, yeah. I also want to chime in on that note. You know,
Yeah.
and I like to tell everyone, I can say this on the air. Two questions did come in, by the way, but one of the things that you said is, in terms of the biggest adjustment, I've even told students is I really like teaching online. I really have. But if there's the biggest changes for me, I think the most biggest change is in terms of where we can go is extremely limited. Um,
Mhm.
I think each and every year, like for the last so many years, I think you and I have both said, I think this may be our last year in Vegas for a long time. Like, I don't want to go. I don't want to go. I don't want to go. Well, sure enough, we got our wish this past summer. And now I don't think we're going to say that again in a long time.
And it's funny you say that, Ming, and part of it too is like I'm not a college professor like you are, but I've been on the wall of sheep stage many times, and when you're interacting in the same room with people, it's a little different than this is. Now the questions that are coming in are fantastic, but I can look around the room and I can read the room. If I'm losing people,
Yeah.
I need to know I need to do something different. I'm sure as a teacher yourself, that you can do the same thing with your students, and we don't have that. And Ming,
No.
your comment made me think of the joke that, as you know, I've made every year. On Monday, when my wife and I are on the airplane sitting on the tarmac after an exhausting 4 or 5 days at DEF CON, we always say, never doing that again.
Yeah.
Never doing that again. And that's in August. And then by December or January, I'm jonesing. I'm like, dude, I got to see my fellow shepherds. We have to get back to Vegas.
It's like greasy food. It's like fried chicken. I mean, it's like, oh my god, I crave fried chicken. But once you have it, you never want to have it for another 6 months. It's like kind of those CEOs. I mean, when I have it.
Yeah.
One question that came in
Exactly.
was, it seems like many of the stories of InfoSec are from the late 90s, early 2000s, while the web was first emerging and becoming prevalent, along with the dot-com boom and bust. How has the industry stabilized, changed over the years? What are your take on it now as the area is much more mature? Mm.
Wow, another very insightful question. I mean, the area is much more mature, and you're right. A lot of and your perception, I think, is supported by those dates I gave earlier. Right, a lot of the early days of this were in the '90s. I think the big thing, you're right, it has stabilized. Now, InfoSec, in my opinion, is not seen just as something for the IT nerds and the hackers to do. It's a part of business now. So the conversations I'm having today are not necessarily with IT people anymore. They're with people that are running the business, and it just so happens that this part of the business is dealing with their information assets, not their computing assets, their information assets. So, I mean, think about accounting. I mean, the laws of accounting, have been around since Jesus Christ walked the earth. I mean, literally, a really long time. No one has to wonder, what is the business value of accounting? We're just now getting to the point where we're able to say, oh, what is the business value of protecting our information assets? If I had to pick one thing, I would say the fact that now, well, number one, and that started with academia. People like me, Ming, who are actually having curriculums dedicated towards this specific discipline. And the second thing is business realizing, oh, there's actually business efficiencies that can be introduced by understanding how to protect these information assets. So to me, it's that we're getting closer to business and we're not buried in the data center.
Yeah. What are the main aspects you've seen security evolve from early on your career to now, and what do you think new security comers should always have present on this new journey? Mm. You want me to repeat that again?
That's pretty. Yeah, please do.
What are the main aspects you've seen security evolve from?
So I alluded to this earlier, kind of poking a little bit at the OWASP. In the 90s, everything was networking. And we didn't even have firewalls. I remember one of the early jobs I had, every single workstation had a routable IP address and was connected directly to the internet. It made remote access easy because you just pointed, you could SSH into your box with no trouble. So again, I love the OSI model, and so it kind of crawled up from networking to what?
We do.
Are you okay?
we like the OSI model. Oh, gee, I didn't know. So
well, I mean, it's one of many models, but I mean, anyway, it was all about networking, and then OWASP happened. It was all about applications, and now we've realized it's all part of the same problem. What is the one? And I think part of the question was, what's the one thing a security practitioner should have as they embark upon this career?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Security, let me put it this way. Security does not exist in a vacuum. It's only interesting in the context of the business that it's supporting. So wherever you end up working, and imagine every industry that exists in the world. I mean, there's a lot of places a security practitioner can end up working. It's important to, work on your expertise in information security, but wherever you land, you have to learn about that business as well. I spent a big chunk of my time in healthcare, so I know a lot more about the business of healthcare than I thought I would ever know, just because I had to understand that to understand, all assets are not created equal. What are the crown jewels in healthcare? Those are different than in oil and gas, and so on and so forth. So I would actually say when you start working professionally, wherever you are, don't overlook the importance of understanding the business, even if your job is not directly related to the business, because you're protecting those information assets.
Cool.
That was a hard one.
Yeah. One of the nice things about having the online format, doing this kind of stuff online is, I've always said, no one knows if you're a cat or a dog. I am extremely impressed with the way that we're doing Twitch, and this one just came in, which is, as you move through your career, any advice from becoming a project manager with rusty tech skills? It seems like in big organization, if you are good technically, they want you to move away from it and become a salesperson or project manager.
That well, it's funny you mentioned that. Now on the sales side, I have known technical people that have gone into sales. I don't prefer that. I mean, we have to have account managers and salespeople, otherwise we wouldn't get work. Interestingly, when I joined NCC Group, at that time it was 17 or 19 years working, I was hired as a technical project manager. And so I myself have made that transition, and then back, technical director, like I said, it's more of a management role. I mean, but you're right. If you want to stay highly technical throughout your entire career, that's certainly possible. But that can become exhausting, to be honest with you. It becomes difficult to keep up. And as you move through life, your goals will change. And not to get too, armchair philosopher about it, but, once my son was born, I had different goals than I did when I was single and childless. And so it can be a very natural progression to move into project management. And I enjoyed the heck out of the time when I was a project manager. Now, I'm glad I'm not a project manager now, but it was good that, I was an older professional in the industry, and I was able to still understand what was going on technically, but I had the life experience, for lack of a better way to put it, I guess, to be the person to interface directly with the business so that the consultants could focus on doing whatever it is that they were doing. I enjoyed the heck out of it. And again, be prepared for change. And I think that's one of those natural changes.
Ah, here it is. Slightly random one. Back in the day, what were your primary resources when trying to learn something new? Whether it be a general skill set or specific exploits. Before this was widespread on the internet, that is.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that springs to mind is Usenet. NNTP, Network News Transfer Protocol, I think is what it was. So yeah, and we still had mailing lists. So news groups and mailing lists were a lot of that. And so you would, the entire world didn't have email back then, so it was a lot easier to subscribe to these mailing lists, and digests would come out, or individual emails, and people would talk about things. And so there were still ways to exchange information. You're right. The World Wide Web was still, very new. But yeah, we had ways to do that. But you're not wrong in asking the question. We had to work a little bit harder for it. I mean, when was the last time that you had a problem with something and you Googled it and no one in the entire world had ever seen that problem before? I mean, it's hilarious. You can usually, it's like, oh, this is a weird problem. I've never heard of this. And then you Google it and like, oh, there's 17 people that have had the exact same problem and they just told me how to fix it. But yeah, we didn't have information at our fingertips. But keep in mind, the complexity of the computing systems we were trying to protect back then was also a lot simpler. So every time we get much more sophisticated, it gets a little harder to protect it. So I'm not going to say our job was easier back then, but it was definitely not as large a threat landscape as we're dealing with today, I think.
Yeah. Any other? Come on, we got to have one more questions than that. I mean, what I thought this was one of the nice platforms because, well, then again, I mean, I can't tell most of you people on Twitch or Cat or Dog. We need more questions. Come on, we need more questions. More questions.
Well, I can go. I mean, let's see what.
Yep, we got one. We got one. We got one. Has the
good job.
Yep. Ooh, this one's interesting. Has the trending topics AI, machine learning, hacking, DevOps, cybercrime help shape the future of security? That's a good one.
Oh boy, yeah. That's the short answer is yes, absolutely, it has. And AI and machine learning are interesting because I said earlier that tools are important, but you have to have the human practitioner. Do we think that AI will ever be smart enough to replace the humans? One of my bosses, actually, in the Austin office, has a machine learning swear jar. He's a bit of a curmudgeon about the whole concept of machine learning. So if ever one of his consultants brings it up, they have to put $1 into the machine learning swear jar. So in talking about these emerging technologies, a lot of people are going to have strong and often dissenting opinions. But yeah, it's in cybercrime. I mean, just within the last couple of days, there's been a rash of ransomware attacks against healthcare organizations. So if you think about the Michelangelo virus, which I was still at LSU, so that had to have been, I don't know, 93 or 94 or something. It was high-tech vandalism. It was a pain in the backside, but it didn't really destroy anything. The problem now is cyber criminals, it's organized crime. They're very skilled, and they're extorting money or stealing money out of people. So that changes the importance of what we do. So it's like, once upon a time it was simple as, someone defaced my website, herpaderp, let's make sure they don't do that again. Now, there was that patient in Germany a couple of weeks ago that had to be diverted because the hospital she was going to was shut down because of ransomware, and she died en route to the new hospital. So yeah, it has changed it because people's lives are literally on the line sometimes when we don't have access to the information resources we need to do our jobs, in this case, the hospital. I think another emerging thing that hasn't come up yet, and it's just because, again, living in Southeast Texas, I do a lot of oil and gas work. Industrial control systems are becoming a big deal. Although industrial control systems have been around for a very, very long time, the operators of those systems didn't have to worry as much about, the hackers of the world, because they were very isolated networks that were protected through physical security and by virtue of the fact that they weren't connected to any other network. Well, that's just not true anymore. That's literally an entire other slide deck I could talk about. But that's another emerging technology, is trying to figure out how to protect these operational and these industrial control systems now that they're connected to the business networks. And I think we're going to see, as the person that asked the question is correct, as technology advances, all of this technology is benign. It only becomes bad, when a bad person tries to use it to do bad things. But that's the thing. With every advancement that comes along, there's an opportunity for someone to do something bad with it. So, yeah, we're never going to be done. Yeah. Not anytime real soon, I'm afraid.
Yeah. Okay, so we have a small queue of questions now. What is your favorite conference to go to?
DEF CON. No, okay. Well, DEF CON, because I've been working with the Wall of Sheep. I think I'm coming up on my 7th year. So I love the Packet Hacking Village. I love the Wall of Sheep. But DEF CON was B-Sides Austin. So I'm actually a big fan of the B-Sides organization as well.
Okay. This is
He goes to DEF CON to see me.
Here's one. I have soft skills are pretty important. Someone has said InfoSec is a people problem and not. Let me repeat that. I'm sorry. Soft skills are pretty important. Somebody has said InfoSec is a people problem, not a tech problem. Any recommendation to grow soft skills like influence and presentation and business credibility?
Boy, yeah, I agree. I mean, sure, there's going to be, some hardcore nerds out there that'll say, "Oh, how could it not be a technology problem?" But I agree with the questioner there. Without people in the equation, we wouldn't have any of these security problems. It's only when you introduce the human that these things become interesting. And again, I was a project manager. I love doing public speaking. And I think those soft skills are important. The problem is whether you're working for an organization, protecting that organization's information assets, or you're a consultant like me, either way, you can't force anybody to do anything. So I think the credibility with the business is an important one. And that goes back to learning about the business to begin with. I'm never going to be a petroleum engineer, but when I'm working with oil and gas clients, I can express to them that I understand how a refinery has to function. I'm never going to go in the control room and, reconfigure the crack tower, for example. But the fact that I know what one is helpful. So again, wherever you end up working, take the time to learn the industry. Soft skills, conflict resolution is a big one because, again, whether you're working within an organization or as a consultant, you're going to have opportunity to tell someone that their baby's ugly. You have to be able to tell someone that their baby is ugly in a very professional way. Probably don't use those exact words, but I think you get my point. So yeah, interpersonal relationship, and you might end up, if you're in this industry long enough, you'll end up as someone's boss, and somebody's going to do something that they shouldn't have done, and you're going to have to deal with that. But the very fact that you're able to articulate that soft skills are important is a big deal. So kudos for you on that. I hope I've answered it. That's a tough one. I'll leave it at that for now, I think.
What is the least secure system that you have been asked to deal with? And in general, are the companies you work with prepared for attackers, or are they extremely vulnerable, or are their systems extremely vulnerable? Hmm.
Wow, the least secure system. I mean, I can't think of one off the top of my head, but we have definitely come across systems that were kind of default everything. And so IT is not, made by Ronco, and by that I mean you can't set it and forget it. But anytime we've come across default credentials, that automatically becomes the least secure. And there's tools. Eyewitness is an open source tool that's great, and you can have it scan a bunch of websites, and it's got a massive database of default creds for known commercial products. And so, yeah, if you come across default creds, and that just means somebody set up a system and was frankly lazy and didn't change the credentials, and you can get into it. Forgive me, I can't remember the second part of that question though.
Okay, sure. In general, are the companies you work with prepared for attackers, or are their systems extremely vulnerable?
Well, I mean, I think I'm lucky in that. How should I say this? Most of the clients that come to NCC Group, and I can only speak for my organization, are reasonably sophisticated, and there's a variety of reasons for that. But they're generally pretty well prepared for attack. However, it's easier to be a red team guy, an offensive guy like me, because the bad guy, the adversary, only has to exploit one vulnerability potentially to be successful. But on defense, you've got to protect against them all. So I tell my clients all the time, your job is easier than mine. I work with a team, we deliver the report, we go through the readout, make the recommendations, and then we go on to the next gig. Meanwhile, they have to fix all the problems that we found. So I think it's a mix, honestly. I mean, if let me put it this way: if people have really, really insecure or poorly configured systems, they're probably not going to be calling us. I don't mean that to sound in a boastful kind of way, but just where we fall in the industry, our clients are usually pretty high up on the maturity model, if I'm honest.
Okay. A couple questions. Have you read Damon, Daemon, by Daniel Suarez? Thoughts?
I haven't, although I like the spelling. I did have an employer once misspell my name as Daemon. That was hilarious. Hang on, let me write that on my whiteboard. No, I'll check it out, though. That sounds like a recommendation, I think. Is it? Probably.
Do you?
That's another. But I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, you're breaking up. You're breaking up a little bit.
So I was just gonna. We should probably poll the room and ask it. Is it pronounced Damon or Demon? Daemon. I've heard it both ways, and I'm just curious.
Okay.
I think it should be Demon.
Do you have a recommendation for a low cost but respectable certification in computer science or communication?
In computer science or communication?
Yeah.
Wow. Certification. Low cost. I mean, Oh man, the certifications. So, but I used to have a SAN certification, and I love their curriculum, but that's not low cost. Those
No.
are expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know that I do, to be honest with you. Shoot, I'm gonna have to take that question under consideration and see if I come up with something. I'll email me.
Yeah. I can't think of one either. I mean, I can't. Like Security Plus, as someone mentioned, that makes sense. I mean, Security Plus definitely resonates for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so we got a couple questions that do you think large companies have done enough to provide us, the end users, with resources and knowledge to fortify our security as customers? Hmm.
Oh man. Um. Huh. So, as customers, are you, so whether if you mean the customer of the company that's providing a computer-based service, I mean, not to pick on healthcare again, but I was talking about the ransomware. But when I was a security architect for a large hospital system here in Houston, I used to often get very frustrated with the companies that would provide biomedical devices such
Mm,
as x-ray machines and patient delivered analgesics, the little clicker that you give yourself drugs when you're in a hospital, and electronic medical records, all of those things. Some of the recommended, not even default, some of the recommended configurations, even back in the early 2000s, were horrible. Like, I'm talking, there was one, I won't say who, but there was a radiology system that the software was maintained by the vendor. And in order to push software updates, they did it through FTP. But they couldn't be bothered to remember separate credentials for each hospital they supported, so they enabled anonymous FTP. It gets better. The service account, which ran the FTP daemon, was given local administrator access. And lastly, they moved FTP root to the root of the system drive. So it wasn't buried away and somewhere else. So what that meant is that anybody that had access to that computer could log in through FTP anonymously and have admin access to the entire file system. That will be burned in my mind forever. So that's just one example of, are they doing enough to fortify? In many cases, no, unfortunately. And you'll still see similar problems like that in healthcare. And anywhere that has highly specialized devices, where the company is more focused on the configuration of their product rather than the sensitivity of the proprietary information. Now, there's also, excuse me, there's also a lot of companies that do that very, very well. But I mean, you asked the question and it triggered me. I immediately thought of that healthcare thing. There are some companies that still need to realize that they need to advise the client. They can't just sell a product or a service and expect the client to, on their own, do the right thing.
okay.
I don't know
Following
if that
up.
was exactly what you're asking about, but
Yeah, that's actually another one. There's a follow up. We got a bunch of them. Following up on that, what is the role of the infosec industry in educating the common consumer on protecting their data and practicing good security at their home networks, personal devices? Oh boy, we're in for a ride on this one.
man, yeah. Do you want to try and answer that one first, Ming? No, I'm just kidding. I
Yeah,
mean,
there is. Yeah, I've heard. I know there's a camp of people who absolutely think to say security education don't work. And there's some truth to that. And there's a camp of people who think security education really do work.
and you're right. I have seen organizations that do it well, but I think the question was about the end user, the people at home. I mean,
Yeah.
what can the industry do? That's a tough one because we still struggle with doing it, as an industry for the people we support and the people we work for. I think as security professionals, even though I give my dad grief every time he calls with what I think is a very simple problem, the reality of it is, just as he gives me tax advice from time to time because he used to be a CPA. He understands that stuff. I think it's incumbent upon us to help out people that want to be better at protecting their information. Now, whether you're talking about information security or anything else, there are some number of people that are going to be willfully ignorant, and you can't help them.
Yeah.
I won't say who, but there's someone in my family that I have told over and over again to stop clicking on every URL that gets sent to him in email, and he still does. So I can't help you. But I mean, I don't know, man. I think information security is an industry. We're struggling to keep up with what we have. You're not wrong. At the end of the day, we all have to get better about it. But, ooh.
Okay, here's a good follow-up question.
Prepared for that.
Here's a really good follow-up. Is what are your predictions for the next 10 years? What are the most significant global security concerns that we will be facing?
COVID's going to be a big part of that somehow. Because like I said, I think a lot of us are never going to go back to the office in the same way that we were before COVID. So I actually was on a panel discussion not too long ago about how has COVID changed the security posture. And one of the points I made is our computers don't become less secure when they leave the office and come home. One of those big changes, I think, is we're going to have to get used to the idea that we can't protect our assets by having them in the four walls of our office anymore. So even though people have been working home, I get it, there's going to continue to be more people. So now that we're poking more holes in the organization's perimeter, what is that? How are the bad guys going to take advantage of that? Because they will think of a way to. Are there products and services that we're going to start to bring into our home offices that will help protect that? I think that's definitely one way. And I think cloud is going to continue. I gas clients that I work with now that 10 years ago would have said, no, we're never going to send our information out to the cloud. But as it turns out, there's so much efficiency and with data mining and big data and concepts like that, that can be very powerful tools. And I think it's not going to be just about the information anymore. It's going to be about how the information can empower business. So I think the business is going to continue to become more and more involved. That's kind of a loosey-goosey answer, I think, but I think the conversation is going to come out from the bowels of the data center, and it is actually, we've been talking about information security having a seat at the boardroom table forever. I think it might actually happen. It hasn't happened yet, but I think it could in the next 10 years.
Here's a really big question. I know you said imposter syndrome is mitigated by recognizing that everyone has a different wealth of knowledge. But for someone looking to join the industry, hearing all these different experiences gives so many paths to take work in security, such as pen testing, social engineering, etc. Do you have advice for someone interested in InfoSec but is experiencing decision fatigue and what to specialize in? Oh, this is a good, this is a hard question. Does the industry have a place for someone that wants to jump between its multiple subdivisions? Oy.
Yeah, so, I mean, consulting might be for you, actually, because if you like jumping between things, and by the way, I'll say that consulting is not for everyone. Everyone shouldn't be a consultant, and that's okay. But I mean, I mentioned that I don't like software development and I don't ever want to do that, but I have plenty of opportunities to be a part of a team that's working on a job, and I have my little thing that I'm doing, but I'm exposed to all these other things. And if my interest is piqued, then I know, maybe that's something I should go learn more about. Decision fatigue, you're right. It is a huge world, and I'm not even going to pretend to tell you how to make those decisions. I can just tell you that in my early days as a systems person, I enjoyed fiddling with computers, and I thought if I could get paid to build servers, and then I had to get the server to work, I had to understand how to network it, and then I got interested in routing and switching. So I mean, this is going to sound like such a cop out of an answer, but you have to follow your gut, follow your passion. You're going to be interested in some things more than others. And rather than following chasing after a job description necessarily, just focus on the technology, and I think that'll start to steer you in the right direction. But boy, that's a hard question to answer.
Yeah.
I mean, me and you probably mentor folks earlier in their career much more than I do. Is there a better answer than that? Surely there is. No?
Well, I was on that same boat. I mean, even I'm on that same boat. I really don't have a good. Yeah. How do you convince? Here's one. How do you convince upper management, CEO, shareholder to spend more / invest more into security where it may slow staff in their operation?
So if you have when you say security, all right, if it slows staff in their operation, you're probably talking about a specific technical control of some sort. Like one good example, not a good example, but it's an easy example, is we have to use really long and complex passwords. Well, now it's going to take every one of our users, longer to log in because of these complex passwords, and it's going to slow down their productivity. Now, that wasn't, spending money on something. I think the answer is, and let me give you the answer in reverse. The problem we have in information security is we don't have a lot of actuarial data. So let's say I'm an insurance company and I want to sell an insurance policy for my life insurance. The insurance company knows a lot about me, and they've got all this actuarial data that they can predict pretty accurately how much it's going to cost to insure me until I die. We don't have that information. So that's the first part of the answer is we have to understand how much the information asset is worth. As it turns out, that's really hard to answer. You can't just go to the board of directors and say, man, you got to start writing some checks because we need more money to protect this stuff. Before you have that conversation, you have to figure out how much is the thing that you're trying to protect worth. Not the routers and the switches and the servers, but the actual information asset. What does that system do, and how much will it cost the organization if that system goes away? As it turns out, that's a difficult question to answer, but that is the question that has to be answered. The problem technologists like me and you and everybody else, the problem we have is we always think of it in terms of the technology. But to answer that specific question on budgeting, we have to evaluate the information asset first.
Remember that time? Yeah. Remember that night that it was 2 years ago that I needed medical attention, and I was actually revived by those Space Force guys.
Oh, is that who? I didn't know that's who.
Yeah, yeah. But at any rate, because this next question has to do with space. What are your thoughts on all these large communication systems developed in space? Do you think that security advances are robust enough to support them?
Yeah, because there's a lot of new space-based, satellite-based technologies. SpaceX, I think, aren't they going into beta soon? For example, I think Amazon has a project. I mean, I don't know very much about them, to be honest with you, but this is modern technology. This is technology that's not based on something else, so one would hope it would be, but the thing that I wonder about, just at DEF CON this last year, there was the Hackasat contest, and a lot of these older generations of, low Earth orbit communication is secured by virtue of the fact that normal people couldn't get the radio equipment necessary to communicate. So kind of a security by obscurity thing. I think the new tech can be better. But if you're talking about encryption, then that introduces latency, and you're already hundreds of miles away. It's a complicated problem. The answer is I certainly hope so. But I'm not an expert in that field.
Okay, here's a good one. When it comes to working with IT vendors, I don't know if these are students that are sending these questions, by the way, but that's okay. What? Yeah, what should you look for in
Troll.
contracts and negotiate? Ooh, this is a good one. What should you look for in contracts and negotiations? Negations. For example, using consultants slash experts in helping a company going from on-prem to hybrid or cloud.
Oh boy. All right. Standard disclaimer: I am not a lawyer.
Uh-oh.
If you need legal advice, contact an attorney. But so what? I have a client. I can't say who, of course, but builds into their procurement contracts that any software they purchase has to be vetted by a third party. Sometimes that third party is NCC Group, but they've got other firms they work with as well. So that's one thing that you can do, but you've got to make sure you're pretty powerful in your negotiations to pull that off. If you're talking from on-prem to hybrid to cloud, I think it's a similar sort of assurance that an organization is looking for. It's like, hey, if there's, and you're not likely to get unlimited liability, right? There's going to be a liability clause in the T&Cs probably, but just make sure that your organization is protected and the vendor that you're buying stuff from is incentivized, not to bugger things up. The last thing is, and this will sound like a plug, and I don't mean for it to be, but there are many companies, including NCC Group, that offer software escrow services. That is where, if you're a company and you want to buy a software, you buy a software escrow contract from us, and then we keep that third-party software in escrow. If something happens to that company, like they go bankrupt or go out of business for whatever reason, then the escrow gets turned over to the escrow holder, and then that becomes your intellectual property.
I've done that
So
before. Yeah.
Do what?
Yeah. Yeah, I ran into
That's
that problem before. Let's not talk about that. Yes, but escrow did help.
But it's a little known technique that exists, and it's not as much of a technological thing as it is a legal thing. But yet, on some level, you're worried about the intellectual property that somebody else controls. So software escrow is one way to do that if it solves your particular problem.
Okay. One last question
Oh, man.
is it?
All right.
One last question, which is because I'm going to run out of time soon. Is it true that on November 12th, many apps might go away from the Play Store?
What's happening? I have no idea. I don't know what's
Wait a
happening.
minute! Whoa! Wait, from the Play Store, from the Google Play Store, or from the PlayStation Store on November 12th?
Hang on. I'm gonna have to Google that.
Is it true that on November 12th, many apps might go away from the Play Store? I mean, the only thing I can think of is November the 10th when they actually have the new PlayStation and Xbox coming out. But that, I don't know. Okay.
Yeah, I honestly don't know the answer to that.
I don't know. This is the first time I've actually been hearing. This is the first time I've actually heard of the November 12th. Many apps might go away. I don't know. This is news to me too. I mean, I'm not gonna
I'll look
pan,
it up.
I'm not gonna pan anyone. No way I'm gonna pan anyone for conspiracy theory. Because hell, anything can be true these days.
Dude, for real.
Oh, the
Yeah.
ByteDance deal. Oh, the ByteDance deal. Ooh, I don't know. That ByteDance apps. Like, who does ByteDance? What are they famous for?
I don't even know what that is, dude.
Are we talking TikTok here?
I'm completely
Oh crap! You know what? If that's the case, maybe I should go down. Maybe I should be. Wait a minute. ByteDance, TikTok, TikTok and WeChat. Yeah, I think I should be on TikTok soon. Yeah. Yeah, I think we need to be TikTok. I mean, hell, I think we should be TikTok superstars or something.
Oh my goodness! I don't know if I can do that.
I don't know.
Just a couple of quick because I know we're running out of time. Main thing for everyone that's listening: there is no right way, there is no wrong way to get in this industry. It's going to continue to evolve. What I did back in the day maybe not be what you did. but success now and over time continues regular reevaluation. So
Yeah.
I mean, there's a place for everyone. There's no reason why this burned out old drummer from Louisiana should be in this industry, and yet here I am. So best of luck to you all.
Chef, what a pleasure. My God, even we had to go over time for this.
The pleasure was mine, my friend.
Dude, I mean, thank you so much. I mean, I know that we work during the summer, but you know what? Doing this digitally, um, let me just say this. I mean, even though we're digital, I mean, even though you're far away, for you to do this, I mean, we didn't get to see each other this year for obvious reasons. Means so much to me and for everyone who's listening in. Thank you so much, man.
My pleasure, dude. And first round's on me next time we are in the same room together. So yeah, I appreciate you giving me part of your class's time.
Are you kidding? Yeah, many rounds. We're gonna need many rounds.
Awesome, dude. Well, I enjoyed it, and I hope you all did too. For those of you listening, some wonderful questions. Man, those are some good.
Yeah,
questions.
this was just blockbuster. It just felt like every question was just an absolute heavy hitter. Like every question was a heavy hitter. They were really stellar.
I'm gonna have to go back and watch the recording to see if my answers were any good. Some of them were pretty tough, but I mean, there's a lot of unknowns. I mean, we're still if we had all the answers to these things, we wouldn't have jobs because there wouldn't be a problem.
Well, we wouldn't be here right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and even for the undergrad, I think for having this for the undergrad, it gives them the exposure, what the real world is like, because we've always complained about, how it's just I think it's getting worse, the gulf between the jump from graduating from college into the real world. I think the gulf has gotten really even worse. But so this is a great opportunity for the undergrads to get exposed to, what is it really like.
Well, and I was sincere when I said earlier, I'm not going to be doing this forever. I love talking to people that are trying to get into the industry or in school right now, because y'all have to come and do this. I want to retire and not do this anymore at some point. But no, it is getting harder. I mean, the world is getting more complicated, and the stuff I was fighting against back in the 90s would be laughably simple by today's standards. So absolutely.
Yeah.
But keep on fighting the good fight, y'all.
We all, yep. All right, we're gonna stop the stream now. Thank you so much, Jeff. Thank you so much, everyone that was tuning in on Twitch, on YouTube. Have a good night.